Hello! Something slightly different today. As you can see, I'm not in a plane. I was meant to fly today, but 042 has got a slight issue with the attitude indicator, and even though it's legal to fly VFR conditions with a faulty attitude indicator, I thought it's best not. So I am going to be flying tomorrow. I've been getting a lot of people recently asking about what's in my flight bag, and specifically about the iPad mount, the cradle, the way that it's mounted to the yoke, as well as how I record cockpit audio and what equipment I use to actually make the videos. I was gonna be filming this in my office, but I can't because I've got kids, got animals, and for some reason after 6 p.m. they all go mental. So I've come up to our little spare room that we use for sort of studying in and getting a little bit of quiet time. So this is my flight bag. It's not huge, it's just a nice little flight bag. So let's go through what I've got in this, and then we're going to move on to the camera equipment and all of that stuff, which is in a separate case because it's special. Right, it's 2020, uncertain times. Hand sanitizer, always with me when I've got my flight bag. In the back, I've always got sectionals. I've got an Orlando Jacksonville sectional and an Orlando Tampa TAC, just in case we need them, just in case we have any sort of avionics failure, or even if the iPad overheats or decides to stop working and I can't use Foreflight. So always got those with me. Right, front pocket. Very, very front pocket. I have another bag, which is my Bose A20s. Love these things, they're amazing. You know what A20s look like, very protective over them, and Rachel's got her own A20s now, so I don't ever have to share these ever again. So that's what's in the very front. If we open up the back, I have an e-board. Very old school, very old fashioned, but I always have an e-board. There's just something about being able to write with a pen on a piece of paper that I quite like. I know that you can do in Foreflight and stuff, you have the scratch pads and you can use your finger and all that kind of stuff, but there's just something about paper that I like. So that's very useful. It's on my leg most of the time. Also in the back, we've got the iPad. Now, I get asked about this iPad all the time. What kind of iPad is it? It is an iPad Mini 5. It's the latest one. This one has got the LTE, so I can use it outside of Wi-Fi if I need to. Of course, I use Foreflight for all of my aviation needs. This program is amazing. I know there are other alternatives out there, but if you're flying in the US, I would say that Foreflight is probably the best one to use. So as far as the specifics of this iPad are concerned, as I say, it's an iPad Mini 5 and it's the LTE and it's got 256 gig as the hard drive. So that is what this iPad is. So for anybody that's been asking, now you know. Right, in the middle pocket is another bag. What could this be for? Let's just move this out of the way. Don't forget, it also says 03 Delta on my bag because why not? Now this is my cable management solution, mainly to do with the cameras, nice and neat and tidy. I've got spare GoPro batteries in here, and then I've got a plethora of USB-C cables, which is the main cable for charging the GoPros, and then of course I've got my Apple charging cable here for the iPad Mini. Those are all my cables. They go with me whenever I go flying. Foreflight Sentry ADS-B solution. Now I know 042 has got a GPS, it's got a 430, and we do get ADS-B in and out on that plane, but it's nice to be able to have all that information on the iPad with Foreflight. So that is a Foreflight Sentry. It fits on a suction mount like this, and I just stick it on one of the side windows, usually above the baggage door, so it's out of the way. Of course, you can calibrate this before you take off. That's always charged, and it always comes with me, so I've got full ADS-B information on my iPad. Right, so that covers everything that's in the flight bag itself. So, as far as the cameras are concerned, everything that I need for that is in this Pelican case. So, if we open the Pelican case. So, in the Pelican case, I keep the cradle that so many of you have been asking about. Right, so this is a ram mount system. It's the large claw, it's called the tough claw, and this fastens to a medium-sized double ball joint. So you can see there's a ball joint and a ball joint. And then that fits onto the RAM mount. I think they call it the perfect fit. It's for the iPad mini 4 and 5. So when the iPad sits in the cradle, like thus, it goes into there and then slots over the top like that, and then that is considered a perfect fit. The other question I get asked a lot about is, why do I mount it upside down? So with the iPad, you always have the orientation. If it's unlocked, it'll always be upright, unless you go landscape, and then if you're watching a video, it'll go full screen. Now, the reason why I have this mounted upside down on the yoke is for one particular reason. When you have it mounted like this, it'll come and sit in front of the yoke, nice and convenient. If you have it like this, it extends above the yoke and then it starts to block instruments. So if that sticks up, I'm not going to see my DG, I'm not going to see my engine instruments, etc, etc. So it becomes a bit of a hazard. And that's why it's upside down. Obviously the screen isn't upside down, but the home button's at the top. But that's exactly why I have it this way. So I'm not blocking instruments, have the yoke accessible either side, and it doesn't act as an obstruction. So that is that system. I will provide links to this in the description below. On to the camera equipment. I use GoPro Hero 7 Blacks. They're all set to 4K 24 frames, and they do a wonderful job. The mounts for the cameras. The mounts are also RAM suction mounts, just like the cradle for the iPad. So again, you've got the suction mount with a double ball joint, and then a GoPro adapter at the top, which is part of the ball joint. I have two of those in case I want to do two cameras inside, or one facing me and then maybe one facing outside. I've also got the GoPro suction mounts, which aren't as sturdy as these, but I do have those available to me if I decide I want 3 cameras inside, for example. Bag of bits, mounts, adapters, these little things, screws, all sorts of things. Just a whole bag full of bits. You need a bag full of bits. I shouldn't have to explain why. This is the mount that we use on the outside of the plane. So these are for the tie-down mounts. So you've seen the footage that this gets in the PA-28, which is usually of the wheels. And of course in a Cessna 172, it's of the sort of main cabin and the wheels as well. Very, very useful, adds a little bit of dynamic content to the videos. And last but not least is this. Now, there's several ways to record cockpit audio. I used to use an audio recorder, which is what Dixon uses, and it works fine. I've always had mixed results with audio recorders. I always find that there's a little bit of clipping, or the audio is not quite as clean as I'd like it to be. Now, I am of a photography and videography background, so I'm a little bit picky about things like that than others. And I found that one of the best solutions was to record straight into the camera, straight into one of the GoPros. So that's where this comes in. This is the Flight Cam GoPro audio adapter. So once you take this off, which is just a little coupling mount, all it is it's a GoPro adapter with a 3.5mm jack that goes into there, and then that goes into the USB-C port of camera. And you can use any of the cameras inside, as long as you realize that you know that the audio is going to be tied to a video track. So it's important to make sure that you don't chop that up as part of the edit, otherwise you're going to be missing audio. If you follow this cable all the way to the end, that you have an adapter. So the way this works, let me just grab my 820s. So the way this works is, if you imagine on the plane you've got your 2 jacks, microphone, headphone. All you do is plug your microphone in like you normally would, unplug your headphone jack, plug this in instead, and then plug your headphone jack into the adapter. So now all the audio is now captured through this cable, goes through into the camera. It's a solution that's been around for a while. It's exactly the same that it works with an audio recorder. It's just instead of the audio going into that recorder and then you having a separate audio file, it goes straight into the camera. And there's something about the way that the GoPros capture this audio, to me sounds very, very clear and very professional. And that's why I like it. It also means that I don't have to carry a separate audio recorder with me as well. I can just bring the cable with me and plug it straight into the camera, and off we go. So that's what's in my flight bag, and it's also what I carry with me to produce these videos. I hope you found the information useful. As I say, I've been asked a lot about the iPad setup. If you've got any questions at all, feel free to ask them below. I'll do my best to answer them as promptly as possible. If you haven't already, please subscribe, click like on this video if you found it useful, and I will see you in the cockpit next week, once the plane's fixed. Yeah. Bye. inside of my flight bag I have... Jesus Christ. It's not the size, it's what you do with it. Which is the headphone, which is the mic?